Welcome to r/MaliciousCompliance, where we share stories of people conforming to the letter but not the spirit of a request. Thank you, friends, for subscribing to the channel and for so many likes. The first story: never tell an angry, motivated person who to go talk to if you're not interested enough to handle it yourself. The second story: sometimes your employer don't know what he got till it's gone. The third story: I brought a wonderful dish to a client on my last working day. And the first story is: management not interested in law breaking? That's okay, the state health board certainly will be. Let's set the stage. I used to work for a massive clinic that's a chain, TM. This clinic tries to maximize the volume of clients we see, and the way it works is that if you bring in X amount of dollars, you kinda get away with anything. Golden goose and all that. This golden goose will be called Lemon Face, because that's what a group of us referred to her. Because anytime she was displeased, she made this awful pursed face that looked like she had not only swallowed a whole lemon, but that particular lemon had previously taken an SH on the floor. Lemon Face was a walking contradiction. She was obsessed with everyone else giving their clients full service time, which, hey, is very important. We had a lot of lazy Susans where we worked, while also simultaneously being 5 to 10 minutes late for her appointments because she was putting on makeup to perform massage in the dark. But at work, I was her target. Her son informed me she personally hated me because I was too bubbly, in a customer service role. My bad? Lemon Face would go into my service room after I had completed my work for the day, go through it with a fine-tooth comb, and leave me plenty of nasty notes if I forgot something. Once I left the table half an inch too high and was called a C-bomb for this infraction. Also, no, she was not my superior. She often interrupted my post-service chats with clients to contradict my stretching or treatment plan I was giving them out of concern. This often undermined my therapeutic authority, and she sometimes talked to them after my sessions to convince them to try her out instead, effectively leeching off my client pool. I had discussed this with management multiple times, and they would essentially shrug their shoulders and say they would talk to her. But I'm here and so are you, so we all know how those talks went. The last straw of this whole thing started one day when Lemon Face saw one of my clients, who went to try her out, wound back up on my schedule with notes about needing to discuss her previous session, which is never a good sign. Lemon Face had read my notes, big no-no, and tried to tell me how to do treatment on said client. Client is also a cancer survivor, which we had bonded over, and Lemon Face was saying that I knew contradicted what her care team had instructed. Client arrives late and needs to rush to the bathroom. I finally get them on the table, step out to wash my hands so they can undress in private to see my clinic admin looking confused and stressed, standing outside my door with Lemon Face, who's smirking that awful effing smirk while holding a clock. Lemon Face taps it and says, "Time's ticking, make sure you give her the full time." KB, I've had it officially. When I get back into the room, I discuss with the client about her notes and she starts to cry. All over her body are bruises. Bruises from her session with Lemon Face. Client had told her multiple times that the pressure or technique were too much, when Lemon Face would wave her off and say, "Just because Healing Touch is a much softer therapist doesn't mean I'm going too hard. This is what pressure is supposed to feel like." So client lied there and took it thinking it was supposed to feel like that. But Lemon Face forgets that client's type of cancer left her much more susceptible to injury. This isn't the first time she's rumored to have harmed, but it's the first time it's concrete evidence. I'm seeing red, and then I devise a plan. You see, Lemon Face was a walking contradiction, but not just about simple small stuff like time management or cleanliness policy. No, Lemon Face also had a taste for doing things her way, like giving personalized service. Her special touch was banging her clients, and then her married clients. Where we live, we're licensed under the health board. We're considered fringe medical professionals, so we have to comply with HIPAA, and we also have one of the most stringent fraternization laws in place. You have to stop service for over a year before you can date a patient. Sex with clients is 100% a no-no law. You cannot do this. We had brought up these transgressions to management, who again waved them away claiming it's just rumors. Don't sully her good name by spreading rumors. They were blinded by her production value. But now she had caused a lawsuit to our clinic by inducing a seizure in a client. I knew they had to listen now. Now they had a more level view of her, they may take this complaint seriously. I brought up both my client's injuries and the sleeping with client's allegation. Look, we told you before that we aren't interested in some rumors. If you really feel these are credible, then go file a complaint with the health board. They said this just to shut me down. What they didn't realize was I was going to take them up on this. Like I said, it's incredibly illegal, and as a healthcare practitioner, we're required by HIPAA and other state laws to be mandated reporters if someone is harming others, which having sex with a client falls under. So what else is a good little mandated reporter to do than report what's mandated? I mean, they even say your license could be suspended if you fail to report. I'm just following state orders here. Well, unfortunately for Lemonface, her license is up for review around this time. The lawsuit is already a bad strike against her. If you have more than 3 open claims or lawsuits within 90 days of your license, you go through a much more stringent review process, rather than the almost rubber stamp you normally receive. I compiled all the names of clients who had been shacking it up with her. I also filed complaints about the client she had harmed during session with her approval, and when the health department came demanding any other complaint files we had on her, the clinic lost their SH. Because it was surprise investigation, the health board gave them a small window to comply and given leniency, or they could mysteriously not find those files and be held just as culpable as Lemonface would be. Like I said, our clinic is motivated about your production value, and her production value in that moment was reading 0. So they flipped on her real quick, and every complaint they had disregarded in the last 6 months suddenly was unearthed. Shady B, they knew how much they were sitting on. She was canned effective immediately, and because I was the reason the clinic was losing their cash cow, they accidentally let it slip that it was I who complained to them shortly before this whole thing went down. Yeah, thanks guys. Sarcasm. Her license, under the extra scrutiny, was then suspended indefinitely. It still is according to our healthcare practitioner licenses being readily available online. It still kinda gives me a swooping feeling every time I see inactive suspended listed next to her name. The second story is, don't want to hire me? Okay then, I'll let you think that over. Here's another tale related to me by a coworker. To understand the setting, you need to know what a cross-docker is. That's a logistics company that ships LTL loads, less the trailer. So let's say that you have a customer that has 2 skids for City A, 3 skids for City B, and a skid for City C. You go to the customer, pick up all of his shipments, then put them in with the other orders for their respective cities. The freight moves across the dock into its destination container. With this arrangement, you spend the day running around picking up orders. Late in the afternoon, the load starts to arrive at the warehouse, and the fun begins. The dock crew worked 4 p.m. to midnight, sometimes later depending on volume. Let's call my friend Charlie. He was a temp in the dispatch office. When he was hired, it was staffed by old manager, manager's nephew, and a day dispatcher who set up the pickups. That was the day shift. Charlie was the afternoon shift, along with 2 data entry clerks. So the dock would load a container destined for a particular city. They hand the folder with the waybills for each of the shipments in the container to data entry, who get it into the server and generate a manifest. Most of these containers were intermodal, and they were shipped out by train. You've seen ships with containers piled on them? Same thing, except for domestic shipments they would use 53-foot containers, rather than the 40-foot containers you see on boats. Charlie would take the folder and then verify that everything in the container was headed for the correct city, check for temperature-controlled freight, check for dangerous goods, and make certain the container was placarded correctly. Then he would go online and check the container into the railway system. When Charlie was hired, they were doing about 5 to 10 rail shipments a shift. He was told to copy and paste the information from the railway's webpage into a report, then send a heads-up email at the conclusion of the shift to each of the partnered terminals in the respective destination cities. By the time he'd been there 2.5 years, that volume had increased to about 40 to 50 loads a shift. Day shift might handle 3 or 4, and manager and nephew would use the copy and paste routine, but Charlie didn't have the time to do that. His brother was a bit of a techie, so when Charlie noticed that he could export to Excel a report from the rail yard site, he got his brother to write a script that would harvest the relevant info and generate reports for each of the cities, and would do it in a few seconds. Charlie approached manager and asked for a position with the company, as it would be a raise, and he would get health benefits. Manager dragged his feet and finally said no. Charlie thought about it for a bit, then told manager, "I'm going to be taking 2 weeks off, starting Monday. Call the agency and get them to send someone else over." Manager was furious, but he didn't have a leg to stand on. He wasn't Charlie's employer, so he had no authority to deny Charlie the time off. Charlie was in good with the agency, one of their stars. Temp workers aren't the most reliable, so anyone who kept his head down and caused no issues was valued, and the agency backed him up. Charlie had friends on the dock, and they kept him informed. The first problem was that the replacement the agency sent had nothing in the way of experience, and manager had trained him from the ground up. This resulted in many phone calls throughout the evening to manager, which got him more and more cranky as the days went on. The second was the reports. This company was on the West Coast and was shipping across the country. Each destination location had a huddled schedule at 7 a.m. in their respective time zones, where they would review the incoming shipments. The dock would shut down sometimes at 1 a.m., and the new temp needed to get the reports out by 3 or 4 a.m., and the copy and paste routine was taking way too long. Which brings us to the third problem, overtime. The temp was running 12 to 14-hour shifts. Manager delegated Nephew to work afternoons to help out. That meant Manager had to cover Nephew's workload as well as his own. Nephew was really not happy either, as he was a sports fanatic and played hockey several times a week. He had to miss his games. Even with Nephew on the job, the reports took forever to get out, and there were mistakes made. Temp-controlled freight was sent dry, and in one case they had to send the dock foreman racing to the rail yard to placard a container before the yard would accept it. After a week or so, Charlie took the opportunity to distribute his resume and put Manager up as a reference. So now Manager was getting calls about Charlie and realized that Charlie might not come back. He was taking flamethrower heat from all directions, and his only way out was to put Charlie on the payroll. By this time, the agency had sent 2 temps to cover what Charlie used to do, with the oversight of Nephew. Manager called Charlie in for an interview. "Okay, Charlie, we'll put you on the payroll. We'll pay you the same as the agency paid you, and we'll give you benefits." "No thanks, I have other interested companies that are offering more." "Fine, we'll put you on salary and bump it up by 10%. "Again, no thanks, I won't accept a salaried position unless I get to go home after 40 hours. If you need me to stay late, you need to pay me overtime." "How much an hour are you looking for?" "Well, I know what you pay the agency for my services, and right now you have 2 temps working to cover the shift. Tell you what, pay me what you're paying the agency, and add the benefits, and you have a deal." "What? That's almost double what you were making before." "And that's what other companies are offering. You can cut what you're paying out to the agency by half, and there won't be as many F-ups. Nephew can strap on his skates and you can watch TV all evening without getting phone calls. Or things can continue the way they're going. What's it gonna be?" Charlie got hired on, made a good chunk more money, and as a sweetener negotiated 3 weeks holidays a year. The last story is, "Certainly, sir, I can get that to you." I found a new job and handed my 2 weeks notice in. My last shift was a complete mess. Several staff and other manager called in sick, so was seriously short-staffed. Then a couple of the big flights got delayed, so we were stupidly busy. I was running between stations trying to keep everything close to functioning, and I just finished a stint on the bar taking orders, when one of the floor guys told me there was an issue with a customer, and they wanted to speak to the manager. I went over and he was kicking off about his food not having arrived. "Where's my fish and chips? I ordered fish and chips and I want it now." Now I'd served him, he was rude at the bar so I remembered him, and I knew he'd only ordered about 10 minutes beforehand, and had been told there was about a half-hour wait on food. Normally I deal with a situation like this calmly and politely, but as I said, it was my last shift. QMC. I said, "Certainly, sir, I can get that for you." Went into the kitchen and plated up frozen fish, frozen chips, and frozen peas. Took the plate out to him and said, "Here's your fish and chips. If you want it effing cooked, you can wait the half hour I told you it would be when I served you." He was not a happy bunny, and started shouting that he was going to report me to my head office and get me fired. I just smiled and told him, "You'd best be quick. I cease working for this company in less than 2 hours," and walked away, leaving him his frozen food. I hope you love these stories. Don't forget to subscribe if you want to know when the new videos come out.